Here's some seriously juicy details. Well, Mr. Joseph Bankman, they've done their homework without the direction of Sam to try to hide as much as possible. Insane tsunami of accusations, and they just don't stop demanding a salary. Welcome back, guys, to part 2 of FTX versus Scam Sam's parents. It actually gets even juicier than what I showed yesterday, believe it or not. This video is jam-packed. It's torpedo after nuclear bombs thrown at Scam Sam's parents. The lawsuit is filled with insane amount of details. It's 63 pages long, so it's pretty long. Now, before I get started, I just want to mention something about the parents and their background as law professors, and just law school in general, academia in law school. So someone like myself who just absolutely loves knowledge, and I mean all sorts of knowledge, from art history to biochemistry, organic chemistry, to technology, to working with your bare hands, fixing things, maintaining things, all that jazz. I love it all. But when it comes to law school and that kind of academic circle, there's like a huge, vast difference between that and, let's say, like a science background, where you have a known right or wrong. Whereas in law school, it's all about rhetoric. So you're graded on your argumentation ability. Now that sounds great in theory. Law school is full of people who abide by these concepts of moral relativism, just like Barbara Fried has explained. Things like distributive justice. It's an absolutely ingrained way of thinking in law school. When you start to adapt this concept of moral relativism, you create excuses for certain behavior, which of course will lead to more bad behavior. As I mentioned in the previous video, I really suspect that a lot of problems in society actually come from this law school, this mode of thinking. It's bizarre. To add to that, as a law student, if you disagree with your teachers and their point of view, you're very likely to not get a good grade. And you can't argue against that because it's all subjective. Moral relativism is subjective. And of course, that creates a lot of problems because certain things should be objective. Now, I hate hypocrites and hypocrisy with absolute passion, absolutely abhor it. So to my personality type, moral relativism just kind of looks like hypocritical thinking to me because it allows depravity. It allows excuses for behavior because they can explain away subjectively what they see as what is correct. Again, it's all subjective. It's all in their head. So the point is, this is very, very common in law school and very, very common amongst law school professors. Super, super annoying. And honestly, this kind of way of thinking in law school, it's kind of like has made its way into the business world, finance, ESG, and all that stock stuff, the money world, of course, all of academia. We see it in the energy markets, oil versus EVs. We see it with the eco warriors who go on yachts, and in one trip, they blow 100,000 gallons of gasoline, but they complain about a Toyota Corolla burning 50 gallons of gas per year or something ridiculous. So that hypocritical way of thinking is just everywhere. It's mind-boggling. Anyways, enough of my rant. Okay, but being aware of it is key. Alrighty, so all accusations from now on are made by FTX. I don't want to get sued by El Señor Bankman or La Señorita Miss Fried. Okay, so they go back to talking about Bankman and what he knew. So the lawsuit says that Joseph Bankman observed and participated at a level within FTX operations and business practices, and with his training and sophisticated knowledge of the law, and given his perceptiveness as a clinically trained psychologist, well, he should have known better and noticed red flags. The lawsuit says that Joseph Bankman simply chose to ignore all the red flags. They give an example that FTX Group, meaning all of the subsidiaries and all of the entities, it's not just FTX Trading. So all of the FTX Group did not keep appropriate controls, appropriate books and records, and security controls of their digital assets. They say that even after learning about the lawsuit filed November of 2019, I mentioned this lawsuit before, filed against FTX Trading, Alameda, and Alameda Limited, where the lawsuit claimed Bitcoin price manipulation, cryptocurrency price manipulation, money laundering, pump and dump schemes, operation of an unlicensed money transmitter service, unfair business practices, and even violations of the Commodity Exchange Act. All of these allegations were in the November 2019 lawsuit. They say that Joseph Bankman did not insist or even suggest whether to look into if any of the claims had any merit, and even much less remediate any control failures. That Joseph Bankman instead focused on wealth preservation and bankruptcy protection specifically for FTX insiders, which of course included himself. They add and repeat that Joseph Bankman was aware of and involved in all of the discussions relating to hundreds of millions of dollars taken out in loans, all given exclusively to FTX insiders. Now here's some juicy details about how involved Joseph Bankman was. They say that Joseph Bankman, back in 2019, he participated in the negotiations of Binance Crypto Exchange buying up FTX stock, that he worked with Daniel Friedberg from Fenwick and general counsel of FTX Trading and of course Alameda to buy back those shares in 2021, totaling $2.3 billion. Joseph Bankman was involved. They go on to say that in November 2021, that he himself, Joseph Bankman, along with Daniel Friedberg and general counsel of Alameda and FTX, that all of them put together were involved in the decision to allow Nishad Singh to take out a $478 million loan so that Nishad could exercise his option to buy 43 million shares of FTX Trading, saying that Nishad made a promise to fully repay Alameda. They say that in November 2021, the day before Nishad Singh signed his promissory note dealing with his loan, that Joseph Bankman began discussions about bankruptcy protection for the FTX group. It says that Joseph Bankman was named in an email along with general counsel for FTX, where this email was talking about discussions regarding how assets, including primary residences, can be structured to be bankruptcy remote, i.e. bankruptcy protected, so they can't be taken away during bankruptcy, which is exactly what's going on right now, isn't it? They're in bankruptcy court. They say that the following day to this email that Joseph Bankman initiated discussions with Daniel Friedberg, where they have a quote from Joseph Bankman saying that it would be great, all else equal, if we could have the founders put money into property in the Bahamas, which is exactly what they did. It's not just the quote they have from Joseph Bankman. They also provided a link, and the link was offshorecompany.com/trusts/Bahamas asset protection. Well, Mr. Joseph Bankman. So if you thought that they're just gonna give back or have to give back some of those millions and millions of dollars worth of property and potentially hidden stash money in offshore accounts, well, clearly they've done their homework to try to hide as much as possible. The lawsuit says that Joseph Bankman went as far as collecting viewpoints from fellow Stanford law professors, law experts, local counsel in the Bahamas, local lawyers experienced in doing this, his brother-in-law, and that Joseph Bankman determined that an overseas asset protection trust, and I quote, was something we might use when we buy property in the Bahamas. But the real issue is whether these things work in the US and to what extent. That's a direct quote from Joseph Bankman in the lawsuit. So the torpedoes just keep going and coming towards Joseph Bankman. The lawsuit goes on to say that Joe Bankman, his involvement increased actually as FTX got closer to bankruptcy. As it got closer to the collapse, he was getting more and more involved, with Joe Bankman taking a leave of absence with Stanford Law School because of FTX. They even quote Joseph Bankman in December of 2021. He tells an FTX employee, "I am no longer getting paid by Stanford because I'm on leave, so you should have me on salary starting December the 1st, demanding a salary." They say this was the start of his formal employment as senior advisor to FTX Foundation, happening the same month he took the leave of absence from Stanford. The lawsuit says that Joseph Bankman's employment contract provided him with $200,000 annual with a possibility of a bonus. But of course, with him and Barbara Fried as insiders, they were both provided with many benefits. For example, the lawsuit cites that in January of 2022, despite Bankman's $200,000 annual salary on the books, the lawsuit says that Joseph Bankman complained to the FTX US that he was receiving only $16,667 per month. He tells the FTX US head of administration that he was receiving only the $16,000 $8,667 per month. And I quote, but that he was supposed to receive $1 million a year starting back in December, where Joe Bankman tells the FTX employee that it would be a bit more than $80,000 a month. The lawsuit says that apparently Joseph Bankman was really upset. He even emailed Scam Sam about this. So on the email to Scam Sam, Joe Bankman writes, "Gee, Sam, I don't know what to say here. This is the first I've heard of a $200,000 a year salary! Exclamation point. I'm putting Barbara on this. Pretty bizarre. Pretty bizarre." The lawsuit says this hugely paid off because within 2 weeks of complaining, they received a gift of $10 million originating from Alameda Limited. And within 3 months, they were deeded a $16 million property portfolio with funds originating this time from FTX trading. Also, he had options to buy millions and millions of shares. Lawsuit goes on to say that Joe Bankman was not happy just receiving all these gifts. He also wanted to star along with Larry David in a commercial where Joe Bankman specifically requested to appear alongside Larry David. They have a quote saying, "Okay, I'm not a sucker, and I really don't care about meeting, say, Tom Brady, but Larry David." Apparently he was a big Larry David fan. They say that Joseph Bankman had considerable discretion on tax matters across the whole FTX group entities. They quote him in January of 2022 about discussions in terms of retaining outside counsel, that Joe Bankman expressed his preference for keeping things in-house, so to speak, because we're always trading off tax issues among individuals and entities. He doesn't want other lawyers looking at the paperwork because, hey, they might find something sketchy. Remember, this lawsuit is 63 pages long, so it's just avalanche after avalanche of accusations against Joseph Bankman and, of course, along with Barbara Fried. But so far, Joseph Bankman seems to be the more hands-on. The lawsuit gives examples of discussions about gift taxes in which Joe Bankman was involved in. They quote Joe Bankman again, "We considered having funds made available by Sam through Arabella, through our own 501c3, through a foreign entity with a 501c3-like charter, and through Alameda as a public benefit corporation." The lawsuit argues that this is an example. This is meant to show that Joseph Bankman had unfettered access and intimate knowledge of FTX group and entities, financials, and of course, their business structure. That these two things, according to the lawsuit, the financials and the corporate structure, would have alerted Joe Bankman that money was moving between FTX Exchange, Alameda, FTX insiders, and other legal entities. The lawsuit goes as far as saying that Joe Bankman acted at times without the direction of Sam, which is a huge accusation. Lawsuit gives an example that in relation to a tax-related conversation with an accounting firm, Joe Bankman wrote to them, he said, "I don't think we necessarily have to involve Sam in this." Apparently, Joe Bankman oversaw a hackathon being held at the Miami Heat Arena. To head this project, he chose his sister, who apparently also served as a consultant to FTX US. She was apparently the director of FTX Florida charity campaign. That at Joseph Bankman's direction, his sister was getting paid $14,000 a month. And this hackathon apparently was a giant flop, a huge waste of money costing millions of dollars, where Joe Bankman authorized his sister to spend whatever it takes. I mean, this is absolute insanity at this point. It's just insane tsunami of accusations, and they just don't stop. They just keep going. Okay, one of the biggest accusations they make against Joe Bankman is his assistance in helping cover up a whistleblower complaint. And this one is kind of weird because the complaint came from an attorney, and this attorney turned up dead. So they say that in 2019 September, Scam Sam received an email from this attorney threatening to sue Alameda. This is that lawsuit that claimed crypto and Bitcoin price manipulation, along with the other accusations. Okay, so Scam Sam receives this email with a threat from the lawyer. He forwards it to Joe Bankman and Daniel Friedberg, where Scam Sam requested Joe Bankman to help in the response to this attorney. And this is where it gets a little weird and a little juicy, because FTX, this lawsuit, claims that instead of Joe Bankman trying to investigate the claims, they started investigating the lawyer himself. They quote Joe Bankman as asking whether or not there are any disciplinary actions against this attorney. Now here, the FTX lawsuit, this one that I'm looking at, they have redacted this section. It says Friedberg eventually all redacted. So that lawsuit was actually dropped. They were paid off millions and millions of dollars. And I talked about that before in my video on Daniel Friedberg. Right here at the bottom, it says, Joe Bankman congratulated Daniel Friedberg for it, saying, "You're amazing, Dan. I hope you can take some pride in having accomplished all of this." Lawsuit says that Joe Bankman remained intimately involved in the FTX group up until the end. So much so that on November the 7th, 2022, right when the collapse is happening, Joe Bankman flew to the Bahamas and joined in the scramble to find more money, to find sources of capital for FTX Group, right after they all just literally were milking the cow. Lawsuit says that Joe Bankman was so involved that he was even included in the letter of intent given from Binance to the small group of people at FTX concerning the sale of FTX to Binance. The day before the Chapter 11 was filed, the bankruptcy was filed by FTX, Joe Bankman was scheduled to meet the Prime Minister of the Bahamas. Why? Who knows? Maybe to help him out with some of his properties there. Anyways, that is like pages and pages in the lawsuit all about Joe Bankman. The nitty-gritty details. So I'm going to stop the video here. There's actually more pages detailing Barbara Fried's involvement. So the video from yesterday was kind of the overview made in the preliminary statement of the lawsuit. So this is the nitty-gritty. So if you guys want to see the Barbara Fried nitty-gritty details, well, just let me know, comment below, and I'll make a third part for this lawsuit. I like details, so just let me know. If you guys want all the details, I'll give you all the details. All right, guys, so I'm gonna leave it here for now. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. As always, please don't forget to smash a like if you haven't, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.